Welcome to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast with your hosts Jim Quinn of OSGA.com and J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports. Let's get started.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Cast Your Bets, week 20 of the podcast as we approach the Super Bowl. Been doing this since the very first week of the NFL season. My name's Jim from OSGA here with J.R. O'Donnell. J.R.O., what's going on with you these days?
Doing well, my friend. Can't believe that it's the 20th week of the podcast. Certainly enjoyed this podcast with you. I think we did a great job. Hang up a nice winner last week, or should I say I hung up a nice winner on Jacksonville, and I got a nice fat total this weekend. It's going to fatten the listeners up, and I just can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, if folks have been listening to us every week, they definitely should have come out ahead and stuck some of that valuable betting money back into their pockets. And, hopefully we've provided them some insights on sports books and kept them away from some places that maybe are doing some disreputable things. And it's been a solid year as we have the championship weekend here this weekend, but I mean, those were some unbelievable games last week. It was just amazing, the end of that Vikings-Jags game, and you did have a fat winner. Yeah, Jacksonville plus the points and ended up being a straight-up winner, man. That was a big-time one.
I feel bad for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They came in there with a chip on their shoulder. Big Ben with a revenge game, threw 5 interceptions the week before. But Jacksonville plays defense, and the turnovers killed Pittsburgh. Jacksonville got the job done. Fournette got the job done. Bortles, a Army-Navy kind of quarterback. And I can't believe they put up 45 points and the Steelers put up 42. It was unbelievable. But Jacksonville's got their hands full this week. They got to come back to earth. They got to collect themselves because New England is running and they're healthy right now.
Yeah, I was worried when I looked at that number on the New England-Tennessee game last week that it was probably going to end up being a blowout by New England, and certainly was. That's going to be a heck of an AFC championship game. And then in the NFC ended up with that the Philadelphia Eagles hanging on. Atlanta, I don't really think playing up to their par there, and the Eagles won 15-10. And then that unbelievable once-in-a-lifetime viewing opportunity at the end of that Saints-Vikings game. The Vikings come out on top. JRO, when was the last time you could say you saw something that unbelievable happen in a football game?
That was the miracle in Minneapolis. There was no way. And, I don't usually watch the games, but I'll watch the playoff games there. I had the over, which already came in on that New Orleans game. But you know what? I just felt so bad for the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees, I became an instant fan of it because that guy is money and clutch. And that ending was just unbelievable. We could dissect it a million times, but I feel bad for the safety on the New Orleans Saints. Minnesota comes in there. They better get themselves, and they better settle down now because they got themselves a world of hurt here with the Philadelphia Eagles at home as an underdog.
One of the things that you've been harping on the last few weeks is defense wins championships. We've got a couple of very good defensive teams going head-to-head this weekend in both games. The Jacksonville Jaguars really looked strong, although they gave up a ton of yards. But, that was just one of those shootout kind of games. The Minnesota Vikings D, Drew Brees is doing the very best he possibly can, and their D still had strong there. Did get lucky with that unbelievable play there at the end. But really, we've got really, really tough football games this weekend. And I think that the listeners should be aware of that, JR. These numbers are tight on these championship games.
Yeah, we talked about it off the air, obviously. This is not the week to load up. This is not the week where you want to try to hit a home run. If you're down for the year, you need to take your lumps. You need to be the disciplined better. I'm telling you, the lines are sharp. They're right on the number. This is a tough, tough week. New England, Jacksonville, two good defenses. And if you look at the New England team, their defense ranked up there. And I harped all season long on Minnesota's defense, and you know where they are here. And Philadelphia with the defense. This is not, I repeat, fellas, not the week to load up. You want to play disciplined and you want to play smart.
Yeah, and this is one of those weeks that's a classic kind of mistake week that a lot of bettors make. That a lot of people still have money in their accounts, even though I've been harping on that. So they're a little fat maybe in their accounts, or maybe they're making that big deposit now for these games in the Super Bowl, so they've got a little extra money. Players make mistakes. I make mistakes. The only people who really don't seem to make too many mistakes are the bookmakers. There's a handful of common betting pitfalls out there, and I think we should talk about them here, especially with an important weekend coming up where people are going to be laying a few dollars on these games. The number one thing, it, I know it, everybody should know it, but yet people still don't adhere to it, is betting with your heart. You can't bet your favorite team. I have a hard time betting against the Philadelphia Eagles, I must admit, but it's one of those things where if you really want to make money, you can't bet with your heart.
Absolutely. The bookies love when people bet with their heart. Obviously, the Pittsburgh bookies last week inflated the line, and people still took Pittsburgh. People this week in Philadelphia, the sharp guys in Philly, the big guys in Philly, the big shops in Philly are going to inflate the number. New England is a public team, and they're still going to inflate the number. People are going to bet this number regardless. 1 point, 1/2 a point, even 1.5 points is a major percentage difference. And when your guy jacks up the line and he knows where you're coming in, it's obviously a system of downfall. People have to be disciplined. I realize as an Eagles fan, you don't like to bet against them, but it is a major windfall and downfall if you bet with your heart, and the shops know it and they play right into that.
Yeah, and it's not that, I want to bet against the Eagles, but I have to also say to myself, hey, you know what? Just because they're playing this weekend, I don't want to bet on them either. I have to really look at a game objectively, and I think I probably only in the course of the whole season bet on them 3 or 4 times despite that huge run they had. Another problem that I see guys having is betting big favorites. In football, I see guys laying money, parlay money, laying their hard-earned dollars down on, huge favorites rather than taking the points. Another big pitfall is betting in baseball, where you're betting on Clayton Kershaw at -225. He's not going to win every single game he pitches. So I never lay more than 160, JR, ever. This weekend, you're looking at New England is -440. I know there's going to be guys out there doing it. What are your thoughts on big favorites? Do you have a cutoff on how much you're willing to lay on a money line with a big favorite?
Money line, believe it or not, I never go more than 150, and I do that for hockey, I do that for baseball, I do that for everything, because 150 is a magic number. Now, people are going to lay that number with New England. They're going to look like a genius, because New England on the money line, percentage-wise, it's going to be a tough go for Jacksonville to go into New England and beat them since they're healthy now. Gronk is back. They got Holden back. They got the kid that played lacrosse at Penn back. They got a lot of wide receivers back. Amendola's back. Let me tell you, Brady is finally healthy. It's unbelievable. Has all year long the wide receivers from New England and the line from New England's banged up, and now everybody and their brother is healthy. They're at home, Jacksonville, in a cold weather climate. Let me tell you, the money line for New England is going to be obviously a safe bet, but it's certainly not a bet that you want to go crazy with at 340, 350. One mistake, and you get sunk.
Yeah, because it's really the thing I don't think a lot of players understand is if you bet a -200 favorite and it loses, you have to really win 3 bets to make that 200 back because of the vig you're paying as a $100 better. So it's just one of these things that people need to be aware of, because betting big favorites will kill you all day long. It was something I learned early on, and it's something I harp on players. Another thing is betting games without really doing any research. I see it all the time where guys are just betting Notre Dame because, Notre Dame's great, or they're just betting North Carolina in college basketball, or they're just betting Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers, or they're just betting anything that's a public team just because they're playing without doing any research. I myself found myself guilty of it a couple of years ago in conference tournament championship basketball, where I was saying, yeah, I'll take a look at Georgetown here, not realizing, one of the kids was hurt. And they weren't that good a team to start with that year. And I think it's a common mistake where it's just easy to do when you look at the schedule. And, it's a busy world these days, JR.
Absolutely. And if I can allude a little bit to myself, some personal stories. I have doctors, I have lawyers, I have Indian chiefs, I have everybody. And what they do is they flat out tell me that they don't have the time to do the research. They're busy people. They're family men. They're doing professional things. They're obviously in operating rooms and courtrooms. And you know what? They pay me to do the research. These guys realize research has to be done. That's why if I have 1 customer or 500 customers, I do the work, and I realize that that I'm not blowing smoke when I do this. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm holed up what I do, and it's hard to find anybody that works harder than me, and that's because people need to pay people, and they don't even have to pay them a lot of money, but they don't have time to do the research. It's amazing. The more I research and the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Oh, absolutely. I've actually stood in line for parlay cards down in Delaware. And I remember one time it was that when Roethlisberger was hurt, I guess it was last year, and the guy turns to the guy in line behind him and asks if Roethlisberger's still hurt. If you don't know that, don't even look at that in that game. I mean, come on. It makes me nuts when I see guys doing it. And it's so easy to do, though. It's so easy to fall into.
Oh, it's absolutely so easy because it's the rush. And you know what happens is the best thing to do for a book is the guy who hit a 2 or 3 team parlay in the beginning of the season, because he's going to have that taste in his mouth all year long. As a bookie or as an out, if you want to put yourself on the other side, when somebody hits that big dog or they hit that 3 or 4 team or even a $10 5-team parlay, they love that because you know what? They think they can get that taste back in their mouth, and that's when they chase all season long, and that's when they get crushed.
Yeah, and you see it happen, and it's a shame where guys just don't follow through with the same methodology, or they don't just stay the course with betting units like we talked about several times during the podcast over the last 20 weeks. The last thing I want to touch on, and it's a sensitive subject for me, is buying points. I find it to be odd to me to buy points. It's almost like you're hedging your own bet. To me, you're picking a horse to win a race, you're picking a team to win a game, and you shouldn't be hedging your bet like that. But I also think there's probably times where buying a half a point or buying a point is really worth it, JR. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know guys are out there doing it, and they're probably doing it this weekend with numbers of 3, and currently we're looking at 10.
People love to buy off of 3, 7, 10, even 14, because those are the key numbers, 3, 7, and 10. I personally could tell you right now from the bottom of my heart, I have never purchased or I have never bought points. I have never taken it, because what happens is I hate to see these guys out there. If you can have a couple personal stories, you'll see on the internet, game of the year, Minnesota -4, buy the point. Or game of the year, North Carolina -11.5, buy the 2 points. That doesn't lead confidence to me. If you do your work and you do the research, you shouldn't have to buy points. Obviously, if you want to buy off a 3.5 or a 7, or if you want to buy off 10, that's fine. But when you buy points, it throws up a red flag to me, a big red flag.
Yeah, it's almost like you haven't done enough work to really feel confident in what you're doing. And the red flag there tells me if you're not confident enough to bet that game without buying the points, you shouldn't bet the game.
That's correct.
It's those are a few little tips we're trying to give you here on Cast Your Bets, trying to keep you informed and help you stick some of that hard-earned money back in your pocket and beat your bookmaker up a little bit, whether it be a guy offshore, a guy in Vegas, or a guy locally. You certainly want to be smart. You don't want to bet with your heart. You hardly ever want to take a look at a favorite. JR's goal limit there is -150 in a favorite. Yeah, you certainly don't want to bet without doing any research. And if you don't have the time or the energy, it's worth taking a look at a handicapper and buying some picks there. Maybe JRO over at pregame.com. And buying points is a touchy subject. I think that's only, that's betting 301 buying points. So there's a few little tidbits as we head into some really tough games this weekend. And, of course, the Super Bowl, the line's always sharp on that. And then you start looking at some college basketball and other sports, and you got to stay disciplined no matter what you're betting out there. One of the things I want to briefly touch on is a super offer we have from uwager.eu and OSGA. The folks at uwager, they've supported OSGA for over 18 years. uwager's been around since 1996, I believe, maybe 1997. Certainly a little before our OSGA started, and they've always supported us in what we try to do, try to help players out, try to keep the bad dogs off the streets and help out the good dogs when we can. And so what uwager's offering right now, if you head over to OSGA.com, click on the big banner on the homepage there, that'll take you over to a special sign-up page at uwager.eu, where once you sign up and deposit $100 or more, they'll give you a free membership to OSGA. It's a $25 value. Guys who are members cash in on member prizes, and JRO gives them a pick that he sells out on pregame for the members during the football season, and it's really worked out well for everybody involved. And we're real big supporters of uwager.eu because they're one of the faster paying sports books out there. So if you get a chance and you're looking to get involved with a place offshore, you can't go wrong with uwager. You hit the OSGA.com site, click on the big banner, and not only will you be playing with a great sports book, but you'll also be part of a great website at OSGA.com. I'm more than happy to give away free memberships with our friends in uwager.eu. It's also the time of year where there's 2 weeks between the games this weekend and the Super Bowl. Sportsbooks are going to start putting some stuff up for you in terms of contests, in terms of squares, and it's certainly something to look at. They're also going to be hitting you up with some bonus money, and keep in mind, if you only bet football, don't take the bonus money because it will have some kind of rollover or stipulations attached to it to make it very tough with only 3 football games left to withdraw that money. You're going to find yourself betting, Australian tennis and women's golf to be able to meet that rollover. So that's something to definitely look at, but definitely come over to the OSGA site, look for those contests, and they'll be out there. Super Bowl's coming up right around the corner, 2 weeks from now. One of the things we're going to do on the podcast next week, JR, you and I have talked about this. I think we should fire up 10 prop bets, 10 for 10, put $100 of our own money in and play 10 prop bets. You think you can come up with 10 out of the list of 700?
Oh, my God. I can come up with 10. I'm all in. Believe me. Let's take the book down. I'm in.
I love it, man. I love it because, it's fun to do, to play a few prop bets during the Super Bowl. You're watching the commercials, you're watching the game, you're going, wait a minute, was that his third catch? That kind of stuff makes it nice and fun. I sometimes I get the people I'm watching the game with involved too, and we all put some money in and play a few of them. It's a good time. So here we are, JR. 3 football games left. This weekend, we've got the Patriots and the Jags, the Vikings and the Eagles. Patriots are right now a 10-point favorite. Vikings are sitting at 3. Patriots totals 46. Eagles, Vikings is probably 38.5, 39 maybe by the time people listen to this. Who do you like this weekend, Jared? Who do you have for the listeners? We'd love to get a little bit of a free pick action going.
All right, let's keep it going here. As obviously last week I looked like I was talking about, or obviously with the Jacksonville Jags, and we're not going to harp on that last week. But you know what? I'm going against the world here. I'm going to hold on my hat here, and I'm going to give you some justification and reasons as the entire universe is playing under Philadelphia, Minnesota, 38.5, and I'm going the other way. I'm going to play over 38.5. Now, my power rating here is going to be 44. That's right, 44 points. As the Eagles gained a little confidence last week, as obviously that ugly win against the Atlanta Falcons, who are certainly not in sync, gave them a little confidence. So let me tell you about Philadelphia. Their receivers have 25 receptions. Now, obviously, Wentz was involved with that, but Aguilar, Alshon Jeffrey, tight end Ertz, those guys can play. Ajayi can run the ball 6.1 yards per carry. And let me tell you about Minnesota. They obviously have the great defense. They have a banged-up secondary as one of their corners is banged up. They have an all-world defensive end that is going to be making some havoc. But let me say, in my justification, and I love the over here, I think there are going to be some short fields. I think there are going to be some turnovers. And I think there's going to be some funky touchdowns here to put this baby over the total. It is way too easy, in my estimation, against these two defenses to play the under. That is a square play, and I'm the furthest thing from square. I like over 38.5. I think Case Keenum is a functional quarterback. I think Foles gained some confidence. The Eagles' first playoff win since 2009. Nobody's going to be flashy, but this baby's going over. 24-20 final. Play the over.
Taking the over. Wow, man. I mean, I guess I'm that square guy you're talking about. Because I saw that number and I was like, damn, 38.5. And then when you start thinking about it, you start thinking, it actually is for a total for a championship football game, kind of a low number there. It seems to me like Minnesota's defense, although I think they do a terrific job, they gave up a ton of yards and a ton of points to New Orleans last week. Breeze doesn't throw those couple of first-half interceptions. Who knows what would have happened in terms of the total score of that game? It looks to me like you've done your work, although I'm just squaring out, man. I'm looking at the under, and it's just staring me in the face, JR.
I realize that the under is the sexy play. I realize take the under, don't watch the game, and come back when it's 7-6. But let me tell you, Vegas and the offshore books do not have those bright lights burning, and they don't make all that money every year, billions of dollars, with the square plays. I'm going to be the only one on the island. I'm going to be the only one at the bar going over, and I'm playing over 38.5. I'm confident in the pick. Hey, if it's 7-6, I'll come back and lick my wounds. But let me tell you, when it's 17-14 at the half and it's 31 there, people are going to be chirping, hey, JR, you obviously do look like you know something. The stats and trends all favor the under. I'm telling you, if you're a stats and trends player, you play the under. But if you want to go against the world, you want to buck the system, and you want to go power rating, couple cheap touchdowns, punt return, short field interception, maybe a fumble on the 1 or 2 yard line, takes this baby over 38.5.
Yeah, it's not that many points to be scored, really, in the grand scheme of things. When you think a 17-14 game is 31 points, it's not a ton of points being scored. So we're gonna put that one in pencil. I think this line's probably going to even go down some from where it's sitting at, JR. I'm going to put it in at 38.5. Is that the right number you're calling there?
38.5, and I think this baby will drop to 37. I even think you'll see some 36.5s out there as I receive emails, I receive text messages, and I receive game of the year, game of the month, game of the millennium, and everybody's on the under. I take it for a grain of salt. And believe me, I don't want to just be the contrarian because I do my research. But you know, a 21-19 or 2019 ball game is over. And how ugly is that score even to be over at 20-19?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things with playing the under that makes it really tough, because it doesn't take a whole lot of touchdowns to be scored to get to a 38 points. So that's what we're going to put down here, listeners. Write it down, pick out your phone, go to your computer, put the play in, get down on over 38.5 in the NFC Championship game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings.
If you let me go in here a little more, I want to give you one more thing. The cornerback, Xavier Rhodes for Minnesota, is banged up. Strong safety Harrison Smith is probable. And Vikings free safety all-world Andros Sadejo is going to be out with concussion protocol. I know that's a mouthful, but 3 backs back there who have been rock solid all year are banged up, and that bodes well for Nick Foles and the wide receivers of Philadelphia.
Yeah, it bodes well for that total. And the wide receivers from Philly played well last week, too. They really did look good. Aguilar really has come a long way this season, and he looked amazing last week in getting the Eagles that victory, making some key plays. Now, speaking of the Vikings, I got some guys this week who think the fix was in there because the number was 5.5, and it ended up 5, and why didn't they kick the extra point? And it just goes back to something we talked about, I don't know, maybe 6-7 weeks ago on the podcast, that these games aren't fixed and there's going to be bad beats. I mean, you had a bad beat earlier this year, JR. I mean, you can't just sit there and say that there's something out to get you. I think you need to man up and say, hey, you know what, I lost this game.
Absolutely. And we harped about it for the longest time as I didn't sleep for 2 days after that Pittsburgh-New England game, as we obviously had the over. I actually had Pittsburgh in the over, and everybody saw what happened. But I grit my teeth, and I said, hey, I'm one of those guys that for every bad beat you get, you come back with a good beat. And, maybe that over in New Orleans, Minnesota last week shouldn't have came in, but it was a good play there, obviously. And the New Orleans Saints hung up 24 points on the Vikings in the second half, which was another nice spot. But, that was certainly a bad beat, but I certainly don't think the fix was in. Believe me, if these games were fixed, we'd know it by now.
Yeah, and especially a big, huge game like this. Like maybe you could say something like that when you have, Cleveland playing, this year's Oakland Raiders or something. Maybe you could see it there. But in these big games, and the thing that I found it was really funny about it is nobody complained who was on the other side of that. Nobody.
Absolutely.
Nobody complained that had Minnesota on the money line.
Right.
Nobody complained that had the over. It's just, it makes me laugh when I see it, and I see it all the time. And it's another thing that we've been talking about here on the show for the last few weeks, the last couple of months is, you got to own up. You got to accept that there's going to be bad beats. The ball's not going to bounce your way all season long. And it's a tough grind. You got to get up early in the morning. You got to do your research. And it's the only way to win is accepting a bad beat and moving on.
Absolutely. Accept the bad beat, move on, do your homework, come back. And listen, that's all going to be in there. For every bad beat you get, you're going to get a good one at the end. You're going to be on the wrong side that ends up cashing. You're going to be on the wrong side of the total that ends up cashing.
I think it's very important to look at everything, man, like you're doing. You got to look at everything. You got to look at injuries. You got to look at weather. You got to look at coaching. You got to look at who's been there before. You got to look at all that stuff before you go and you put your hard-earned dollars down. And that's why a lot of times guys should turn to a fellow like you, and you're over there at pregame.com, right, JR?
Absolutely. J.R. O'Donnell, pregame.com. Just go to the website. You have to admit they do it right. RJ Bell does a nice job there. Pregame.com. I hang my hat there. I'm transparent. I got killed in baseball. Let me tell you, I'm a transparent website. I lost big money in baseball. I'll admit it. But I'm doing well in the other sports. It's a transparent website. And you can see every game I put up there. J.R. O'Donnell at pregame.com.
Fantastic, man. And it's a whole new baseball season coming up. McCutchen just got traded to the Giants, which is just killing me. It really bums me out because I like him and I don't like the Giants. But yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, I've had some years in baseball where I've got dogged, and then the next year I come back and I'm like smoking them. I go in stretches. I'm very streaky with baseball. It's tough for me to not stay. You got to stay the course. You got to say your methodology's right. You lose 5 out of 7 in a week in baseball, you're going to come back the next 2 weeks and go 14-8. And you just have to realize that it's just tough. And I'm glad to see that you're over there at pregame.com. Look for J.R. O'Donnell out there. Look for myself over at OSGA.com, where we try to help players with problems. We'll have a really great, super easy Super Bowl contest coming up. You pick a bunch of prop bets, you bet the total, you bet the side, and you pick that in our contest, and off you go. It usually has a cash prize in there. I think we'll be offering cash again this year for a first prize. We'll have some sportsbook prizes in there, maybe a nice autographed book from another handicapper friend of mine who wrote a real terrific text. Look, folks, it's been great having you all season long here on Cast Your Bets. We'll be back next week on iTunes, on Blueberry.com, on YouTube. We'll be back with our 10 for 10 prop bets on the Super Bowl, and we look forward to seeing you back right here with Cast Your Bets.
You've been listening to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast. Check in each week for more inside the sports gaming world, and don't forget to check us out on your favorite social media site and on our YouTube channel at OSGA Sports Betting. Thanks for listening.